Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 3. He's Dave Bryan, Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Hope you're all doing well and staying safe. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It is a happy Tuesday based on a lot of the happy things that happen on Monday.
Yeah, we have a whole lot to talk about today. Starting to feel like football season really just kind of feels like once that calendar switches to August, even in a year like this, you kind of get back into football mode, and that's kind of where my mindset has shifted. But the Steelers have kind of made it easy because they have cut their roster down to 80. They've made a flurry of roster moves since we last talked, and I'll go through the roster moves now. They've released 8 players. At least initially released 8 players is nice. We'll talk about here in a second. But initially they released quarterback J.T. Barrett, running back Rob Webb, wide receiver Quadri Anderson, offensive lineman Christian Montana, outside linebackers Christian Kuntz and Dwayne Hendricks, safety Tyreek Cannell, and defensive end / nose tackle Josiah Coatney. And then also released Arian Springs off the COVID list yesterday. A couple players did go on the COVID list though. That is running back Jalen Samuels and wide receiver James Washington. Again, full disclosure, does not guarantee that they tested positive for COVID-19. It could also mean that they were exposed to somebody in close contact who had the virus. So that is the flurry of roster moves there, and now they sit at 80 with the Curtis Riley signing becoming official yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. That's you said a mouthful there. Real quick, did you know that we are, on August 6th, right? Was when the game against the Cowboys, the Hall of Fame game was scheduled to be played. So
was it?
Yeah, so we're 2 days away from what would have been their first preseason game right now. So that's kind of the reality of all that's kind of happened now. All right, with the roster moves, I don't think there was a surprise or two in those in that list of 8 or 9 players that were initially cut there. Coatney, obviously, the team's how would you like to say the highest priority undrafted free agent. They gave him a $15,000 signing bonus, the largest of any undrafted player that they signed this year. And he's out the door before really any practice takes place, and that'll leave a dead money hit this year of $5,000 and a dead money hit next year of $10,000. In the grand scheme of things, excuse me, that's peanuts. But where was your, did you get the evaluation wrong there? When it, did he become a different player in the Zoom meetings or something along those lines? Did you find out something about it that you didn't like? Once again, not a huge deal, because the idea that Coatney was going to make the 53-man roster was, I think, far-fetched, but, probably could have been a practice squad guy for you, there. So, JT, a lot of the other names, I think I had about 4 or 5 of those names, on my list of 10 that I thought would be the initial 10 trimmed. Obviously, the Steelers placing a handful of those guys on the COVID-19 list took away from some of the guys that you probably thought might be cut. So we'll have to see what happens at a later date here. But your thoughts on that overall flurry of roster moves there?
Yeah, some of them were obviously no-brainers. J.T. Barrett just didn't have a chance as a number 5 quarterback. Quadri Anderson was going to go. You knew that because no special teams opportunity for him without a preseason. Montana was on your list, so that's a good call there. A couple outside linebackers, they trimmed the fat. The one guy that surprised me a little bit, in addition to Coatney, was Tyreek Cannell, the safety. But maybe after signing Curtis Riley, that kind of made him more expendable. And I had Cannell on my 53-man roster prediction. I swear, I'm the Grim Reaper for the random future. I think last year I had that too. Somebody, I forget who it was, on the 53 that got cut before training camp. So beware if you're a safety trying to make a roster as a fringe guy, because I'm a death sentence for you apparently.
Who did I have? I think maybe one of the early ones I had the PJ, the Texas safety last year.
Yeah, PJ Jones?
No,
the corner. Yeah, what was his name?
I think he was a safety, wasn't he?
Or was he safety? Yeah, he was a safety. Yeah.
Out of Texas, the undrafted free agent.
I remember him. Kind of a horrible tackler, physical dude.
Right.
PJ Locke.
Locke. That's it.
Yeah.
So, and look, I mean, you were really spitballing this year with not having any OTAs or anything along those lines. But, no huge surprises there. Obviously, you hate to see, look, and either you wrote about it or Matthew wrote about, Justin Lane. Man, that's the last thing that you want to see, right?
Yeah, you got a couple of young guys now. Obviously, Jalen Samuels, Washington have more experience and tenure and play time than Justin Lane. But yeah, it's been a tough NFL career to start for Lane. Last year, obviously, he gets thrown in the fire in that first preseason game against Tampa Bay. Then doesn't play any defensive snaps last season as COVID misses, or it's on the COVID list, I should say, and misses the entire off season, no preseason for him. A lot of things working against him early in his NFL career.
Yeah, you got a second-year guy, and man, look, I realize they're not missing. I mean, for Christ's sakes, we got football and shorts and hats going on right now. But you obviously can't be around a team right now. So, those kind of things that they might be small, but it's little things like that you hate to see with these young players.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he needs every rep possible, right, and every opportunity to be around football again, and he's not going to have that opportunity. So the question is a timetable for these guys, and again, Arian Springs was activated from the COVID reserve list yesterday and then released to keep the roster at 80, but it is important to note from that Springs was on that reserve list for 8 days, just to give you an idea for maybe the earliest we could see some of these guys come off the COVID list. So it could be 8 to 10 days seems to be maybe the range for some of these guys. So hopefully Lane can get activated in a couple of days.
And then obviously when these guys like Lane and Washington and, some of these other guys come off, corresponding roster moves will have to be made.
Mm-hmm. Right. So as Matthew wrote about, I think yesterday, they're not done trimming the roster yet. Once Samuels, Washington, and Lane get activated, they will have to make a corresponding roster move to stay at 80. And of course, they didn't have to cut to 80 until the 17th, but as most teams are doing, they are cutting to 80 ahead of time to avoid the whole split squad clause if you do stay at a 90-man roster.
Right. And I think that's definitely understandable.
Yeah, I think that's probably the preference for most teams at this point, with the cut inevitable before padded practices begin. Okay, so that was everything on roster moves, I think. Anything else I'm missing from that? No, I think I got everything. In regards to the Steelers roster moves, we'll keep you updated with any other moves that come across in the coming days. Dave, where do you want to go here? We can talk about Wendell Smallwood. We can talk about what Ike Hilliard said. What direction do you want to go with this?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to highlight the fact that camp opened, I guess, really officially with the veterans yesterday, and nobody on the active PUP list.
Yeah, and that is very rare. I think you did a study on that a while back, a year or two ago, that I think they basically almost every year have somebody on the PUP list. So it's good that while there's some COVID guys, no injuries to start camp, at least no serious ones.
Yeah, and I think last year, wasn't it last year that Watt was the only one on the list with the hamstring? Yeah. And then
we thought we were going to get lucky. We thought we were going to have 0, and then Watt popped up for like 2 weeks.
Absolutely. So I think that's kind of important. Now, obviously, we'll see what happens here moving forward. I would think yesterday would have been the day, and the distinction about that real quickly is if once a player starts practicing in training camp, he is no longer eligible for any of the PUP list. And I think people get caught up in that or lose sight of the fact that some people think that if a player gets hurt during training camp or during the preseason, if you're playing in preseason, that the player can go on PUP. That's not the case. So the fact that if any player gets injured moving forward right now, they would have to go, if they were to miss time, they would have to, at the start of the season, they'd have to go on injured reserve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's good that this team is healthy right now, that there are no PUP guys. At least, again, I believe that is the first time in a long time. Other thing that we should note here, and by the time people listen to this, I'll probably know a lot more than what we're going to be talking about during the podcast, but Ben Roethlisberger is scheduled to speak to the media at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so we'll kind of throw that into the conversation whenever we see those tweets come up and get you the full context of what he says a little bit later in the day. But it'll be very good to hear from Ben for the first time in a media setting like this, for the first time in quite some time.
Absolutely, and he obviously threw yesterday, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not. We knew it was going to happen, right? The way he had been throwing and working out and all throughout the off season. But I think just the finality that there he is, he's now working. That's why it's newsworthy. That's why people made a big deal of it yesterday. And it'll be interesting to see what he has to say, here coming up here in the next hour or so to the media. Cause I guess really it'd be the first official time that he talks to the media since, I think, not long, right around his surgery time last year. So
right.
Will definitely be good to hear from him.
Yeah, it will. Just good to see number 7 throwing in Heinz Field again, a sight we have not seen since almost a year, September of last year. All right, Dave, let's go to Ike Hilliard. Speaking of speaking with the media, this new wide receivers coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, spoke with the media, had a lot of interesting things to say yesterday. And while obviously the offseason is detrimental to rookies and young guys and definitely missing a lot of reps, and it's just even tougher mountain for those guys to climb, he was still optimistic and still set the bar high for second-round pick, rookie receiver Chase Claypool, and was asked why he was so excited about Chase Claypool in the first place, and he said, quote, "You can't teach 6'4", 238, and 4.41 electric 40-yard dash time. It's just something that doesn't fall off of a tree." And he just said basically that if the guy comes in, produces, and make plays, he's going to continue to get the opportunity to come in, produce, and make plays. So definitely going to be a tough year for Claypool, but Ike Hilliard not changing expectations one bit.
Yeah, you would expect him to be optimistic about a young player like that, and I respect that. I thought Ike Hilliard, listening, he looks a lot like a young Richard Mann, doesn't he? Is it just me?
Yeah, I can see that.
When you look at him in the face and the eyes, doesn't he look like a young Richard Mann? I mean,
I have to get a picture of younger Richard Mann, but yeah, I kind of see it.
I mean, heck, were cameras around when Richard Mann
when the Earth was cooling? It was you and Richard Mann first to walk the Earth, right?
But that's the first thing I think of. If you take Richard Mann's glasses off of him, I think you got a spitting image of that's the first thing I thought of when he was on camera yesterday. There was that, but I thought Ike Hilliard, did what you want a one of the key questions I think kind of gets that maybe kind of got glossed over is talking about leaders in the room and all like that. And he said, look, I got to be the leader in the room in so many words. It all starts with me and moving forward there. And it makes you wonder. And I'm not saying this was a fault or anything, but how much I know Juju was trying to take on that role last year, but with the death of Daryl Drake and all like that, makes you kind of wonder if they needed more of a positional leader in there. I know Ray Sherman was kind of thrown into that and all. Maybe it will make a big difference with such a young room, this year that you have a guy like him leading.
Yeah, I think certainly it's a different contrast to the Richard Manns and Daryl Drakes, and they are great receiver coaches, but Hilliard is definitely younger and in a sense could be more relatable, and obviously he has the NFL experience that Mann and Drake did not have, and that I think builds credibility to when you coach these guys, especially a group that only one guy older than 25 in that entire receiver locker room, which is crazy to think about. So Hilliard, obviously a former 7th round pick, and I think in relation to Juju, the question was, how do you work with Juju and get him to bounce back and put him kind of in the right headspace for 2020. And, Hilliard said he had 8 surgeries in his 12-year career. So he knows about what Juju went through last year, playing through pain, playing hurt, trying to bounce him back from that and get back in the right place. So I think the credibility of his NFL resume, and he's been a receiver coach for a decade. So it's not like he's brand new to coaching either. That combination could be really valuable in that room.
Absolutely, it could be. And back to him talking about Claypool and all. I respect him saying that, saying, look, this is a guy we hope to get playing. But, make no mistake about it. Claypool missed a lot of valuable time during the offseason, through no fault of his own, obviously. So it's going to be real challenging, I think, for the Steelers to get him on the field, I think in a red zone we could potentially see that kind of stuff here with him, and obviously he'll be on special teams. But I still think it's going to be challenging, especially in the first quarter of the season, to get him on the field. Now it'll be a testament to Claypool. A lot of credit, if he manages to get a lot of playing time. Look, Deontay Johnson managed to play, probably 3 times the amount of plays that I thought he would be able to play the first quarter of the season. Now, obviously, Moncrief falling flat on his face, played some role in that, and then obviously Juju going down later in the year with the injury helped Deontay get some snaps too. But I'll see it when I believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, obviously I can, as you said, appreciate Hilliard setting the bar high. You don't want to change expectations and say, well, we're just a redshirt for Claypool, because that's not the mindset you want to go into this thing. You want to shoot for the stars. But it is going to be tough for Claypool for all the reasons you said. However, just like Deontay Johnson last year, because Deontay Johnson was number 4 receiver last year, if you kind of look at it big picture, and Claypool right now sits as number 4 receiver. So all it's going to take, in theory at least, is one injury or one illness or some opportunity for Claypool to now be in that top 3. And if you're a top 3 receiver, your translation, a starter, for this team. So while we don't think out of the gate Claypool's going to have a serious role, more of a sub-package, situational type role, red zone like you're talking about, all it's going to take is one injury like last year, one issue for him to get elevated into a sink or swim type role.
Absolutely. I mean, you figure at he's going to start the season at, number 4, number 5, somewhere, we'll see what happens with Ryan Switzer and all like that. But that's where he's going to start the season at.
If Ryan Switzer's play never chased Claypool. Oh, the Twitter comments. There'll be many. But, 2018, Terrell Edmonds, not supposed to start right away. He's starting week 1. Deontay Johnson, not supposed to play a lot right away. By, week 3, he's starting. So, even though we've tempered expectations for these rookies, although none of these guys are expected to come in and have to play right away, often there's some issue that pops up, injury, or in the case of this year, illness, that's going to force some of these young guys to play, and it's going to be even tougher for them this year. But, the quote for Hilliard is, quote, if Chase does what we expect him to do, and that's make plays early and often, Chase is going to play a lot. He's going to be really good, and that's what we expect a lot from those guys. So that is the comment there from Ike Hilliard on Chase Claypool. He also talked about James Washington, calling him a freakish athlete, but also said he wanted to work on Washington coming off press coverage and being a more quick twitch, I think was the phrase, kind of guy too. And by in context, having him be able to run a more diverse route tree and not just be a vertical threat wide receiver.
And that's a very fair evaluation on his part.
Yeah, I think Washington definitely took big steps last year, and those are important to note, but he's not a finished product. You want to be more than just a vertical receiver, although that would be his primary role in Pittsburgh, but he's still a third-year guy with a lot of room to grow.
Absolutely.
And let me just get the quote on what Hilliard said. Quote, timing and spacing, I'm getting specifics about using his hands at the line of scrimmage versus press a lot more, using his strength that way, finding a way to get more lateral movement out of him in terms of quick twitch to help him get away with some of those things because of the linear athlete he is. So definitely going to be an important year for James Washington. Anything else that Ike Hilliard said that kind of caught your ear, Dave?
No, just him wanting to try to get with Roethlisberger as much as he can, make sure they're on the same page to help the receivers get on the same page, and along those lines. So overall, look, I mean, I thought top to bottom it was an enjoyable first really initial press conference with him.
Yeah, thought it was really good stuff from him for sure. All right, Dave, you've done a deep dive into running back Wendell Smallwood, and I think you're probably becoming more and more impressed by him, it sounds like, the more you dive into his tape. Yeah, and we talked on the podcast last week. I said, well, look, one of the things I want to do over the weekend is take a deeper dive, especially on when it comes to Smallwood, when it comes to his pass protection and kind of his special teams contribution, because if he's going to make the 53-man roster as let's say that change of play, the veteran change of pace guy over a guy maybe like Jalen Samuels, then he's going to have to, his pass protection is going to have to be there. His ability to catch the football out of the backfield obviously will have to be there, and his ability to play, contribute some on special teams. I went back in his tape. I mean, I went all the way back to his 2016 rookie season, and he's not Le'Veon Bell in pass protection, but man, he is impressive. There were some things there that I found that, you go back and you look at, the playoff game, I think, what was it, 2000,
2018 against the Saints, and him standing up a blitzing linebacker there. And you see there's a lot on tape of him cutting down like a safety blitz, and even on the safety blitz that he cut down in that game against the Giants, he forewent a play action fake on that play to make sure he got out there on the edge. To pick up that player, and it allowed, I think the quarterback was Carson Wentz to extend the play and make a play down the field for what looked to be a first down on that play. So this is a guy that's willing to step up into the whole, eat up open grass, and put his body out there and pick up a blitz. And he seems to be pretty heady in that area as well too when it comes to doing it, as far as knowing, who he should be getting. Now, look, he has warts in that area, and I made sure to post a couple of clips in that post about, him not so great reps when it comes to pass protection there. So he's obviously not perfect. And once again, nobody's going to confuse him with Le'Veon Bell, I don't think, in pass protection. But man, he's 3 times better what Jalen Samuels is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's going to help us cause. Now, in the special teams category there, I didn't realize he was a 4-teams player, and especially last year, with Washington. You can go through and you can find snaps on both the punt teams and both kickoff teams. Now, obviously not a premier kickoff returner, but he has done it. I think he's got something like 16 or something along those lines, and 180-yarder for a touchdown. So he can do that if you need him to do that. And on the, he's covered some, quite a few kickoffs and all over the kickoff line too. I mean, everywhere from like L5 to, I think, R3, lineup, positional wise on the kickoffs there. So he's done that. He's made a couple of tackles that way. And then on the punt coverage team, they respected his abilities enough that he was the left wing protector. And so you have to have some blocking ability to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to have a lot of trust. You don't see a ton of running backs go down there and cover punts in this league. So, in terms of his pass protection, if you had to rank it based on the current Steelers running backs, is he second best behind James Conner?
Well, obviously haven't seen at the NFL level Benny Snell really have to do it much, right?
Well, he did a little last year. I thought he did a nice job in pass.
Right. I mean, but
not a ton of opportunities.
Not a ton, right? So I would say until I see more from Snell, I would probably say, I would say probably Wendell Smallwood is probably the second best pass protecting running back on the team right now.
That's very interesting. Now let me just ask you a big picture, because I know whenever Smallwood first signed, we thought, well, Philly probably does not have a great chance to make the 53. Have your
I said I said he's got a chance.
Great chance. I mean, he's outside looking in. I mean, but okay. So, but have your thoughts on his odds of making the roster change now that you've kind of watched him a little bit more?
I am more inclined to think that he's got a better chance to make it for sure. And especially when you look at the comp, I mean, who is his direct competition? Jalen Samuels, pretty much, right? And Kareth White.
Yep.
I think he is a better. Now he's not as obviously explosive. And here's one thing that I still have to do. Yeah, I still want to look more at his running ability and all like that, as a runner and how he's used at a back. But I think he's a more complete player, and included in that is pass protection and special teams and all like that. I think he's a more complete player than both Samuels and Kareth White. So with that, I think he's got a strong chance at being. I mean, how many are they going to keep? 4 true running backs at most?
Yeah, at max 4.
Along with Derek Watt at fullback. So, I like his chances, Alex. I mean, I think he's a more complete player. I'll tell you this much. The more tape that you watch on Smallwood, and I wasn't as positive about it. It was more of a head scratching signing right when it came across to me. But the more that you get into his film, the more that you see that, and understand why they had interest in him.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you use the word completeness with Smallwood, because that is supposedly supposed to be Samuel's calling card, is this versatility, can do a little bit of everything. But if Smallwood can do that and do it better, then that may really hurt Jalen Samuel's chances.
Because look, I mean, Jalen Samuels just isn't that, dynamic of a player, obviously, right? And I think Smallwood, like I said, Smallwood probably top to bottom as far as complete player, probably 3 times maybe the back that Jalen Samuels is.
So who do you think has a better, and it's hard to project, obviously, because we're not going to get to see these guys, but who do you think has a better chance to make the roster outright, Smallwood or Samuels?
I think, I really warmed up to him watching a lot of his tape. I think he's a more complete special teams player, and I think he's he's obviously a better pass protector. So yeah, I would tend to go with Smallwood. Just from what I've seen so far. Now, once again, I want to look at his look. I mean, you don't want to get in a situation where Samuels, is having to tote the ball for you a bunch. Now, you could obviously use him out in the passing game, but I think if you go through Smallwood's tape as well too, and I've done that a little bit offensively, they used him a lot and spread him out a lot too. They used him offensively in a lot of ways the way the Steelers have used Jalen Samuels so far. Spread. Now there's not a lot of wildcat passing.
Just a good thing
going on, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But they did move him quite around. I think he's a very accomplished receiver there. Hey, drawing a few quick parallels too that I'm not sure we've done yet. Ike Hilliard was with Washington last year. So he's probably got a pretty good idea about who Smallwood is, right? And another thing, went back and looked at the pro day circuits from 2016. Obviously, Small went to West Virginia, and who was front and center for that pro day, as is usually the case.
I'm guessing Tomlin was there,
and Kevin Colbert. Right,
okay,
both those guys there. Not that means a whole hell of a lot in the grand scheme, and I don't think Smallwood was one of the players that they brought in. I'll have to go back and look at the 2016 list, but just drawing those little, connecting those little tiny dots there. Now, would I go out and bet my house right now that Smallwood makes to 53? No, I'd be crazy to do that because you got a quite the selection of running backs to choose from, but. I think when you look at his competition being, and if we agree that really McFarland's not competition because McFarland's almost really a semi-lock to make the roster. If you look at his competition as being the two guys in Jalen Samuels and Kareth White, once again, I think Smallwood, is the better all-around player of those three.
Yeah, no, it's great insight, and I'm not opposed to that. I mean, I've definitely been critical of Jalen Samuels and think his value is not as strong as what some believe it to be. So Smallwood can just be a better version of Jalen Samuels, a better pass protector, probably just about as good a receiver, maybe more explosive runner, then, hey, I'm all for it.
And I didn't think I'd find that, going into his tape this weekend, but that just goes, that's why you look at the tape,
Yep, amen to that. It's a great case study and why the tape and the film matters. Dave, actually, I did realize we forgot one coordinator speaking. Keith Butler spoke on Friday after we finished the podcast, so we have some time here on the show today. So I do want to talk about what Keith Butler had to say, and starting with the inside linebacker position, because that's where much of the conversation revolved around, saying that Vince Williams is going to have an expanded role in 2020 with the release of Mark Barron. Now, exactly how expanded that role will be, will it go back to 2017, 2018 levels where he's playing over 700 snaps? We're not quite sure, but Vince Williams, of course, will be starting inside linebacker-wise next to Devin Bush in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I think you wrote up a good portion of that. What did you think? What were the key points? Look, here's the thing we've talked about with Vince Williams, right? I mean, why? If that's the case, if you're talking that glowingly about him, why didn't he play more last year? Why did you go out and get a guy like Mark Barron? Did you really think Mark Barron was that big of an upgrade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a valid question, and I did not feel like Barron was that much of an upgrade. So maybe it was just a mistake by the front office and the coaching staff, but that could just also mean about the perception of Vince Williams. And the big thing that Butler talked about in relation to Vince Williams is communication. He says, Butler says, quote, "As we went back and looked at our 2019 video and graded ourselves, if anything went wrong with our defense, it was more on our communication and really on our secondary communication." Goes on to say, and Vince is real good at doing that for us and getting the calls to the guys and making sure they know that we're all on the same page. That's big for us, and that's what Vince Williams brings to the table. And there's no doubt communication was an issue last year. Wasn't really a consistent guy with a green dot. You had Devin Bush, a rookie, Mark Barron, who Mike Tomlin called him mute back in training camp, and Vince Williams is certainly someone that is an energy guy, a vocal guy, and communication would not be an issue if 98's on the field.
It just seems weird. Like, okay, he wasn't good enough to man those snaps last year. Now a year later, here we are.
Mm-hmm. But we know his role is going to expand, though. He's not going to be just a base linebacker like last year. It has to expand.
Yeah, but I mean, do you look forward to seeing those kind of snaps? Those expanded snaps?
I'm not really mad about it because I still like. I mean, I'll either tomorrow, Wednesday, or Thursday. I'll have a deep dive into Vince Williams' coverage and going through it from a stat standpoint and from a tape standpoint. While he's obviously not an elite cover guy, and you want Devin Bush to be here every down, all situations linebacker, and that's still probably going to be the case this year. I'm not mad with Vince Williams playing in nickel packages, to be honest with you. Now, again, the question is, did they really give him 700 snaps, or did they do more dime defense with Terrell Edmonds spinning down? That's a possibility. So I don't know if we're going to go back to 2 and 3 years ago levels of his snap count, but last year he was basically playing in just a 3-4 base defense. This year he's going to play in that and get some nickel work. The question is, will he get all the nickel work? And I think the jury's still out on that one. And
that's my biggest question and concerns is how much of that sub package work is he going to get? Look, sign me up for having him out on the field, especially when you got a fullback out there or pulling guard, or you need a guy to rush the quarterback, with a running back in the backfield. Sign me up for all that, My biggest concern though still is a large selection of sub package snaps for him in the passing game.
Yeah, and that's fair, and I understand that point absolutely. But again,
here's the thing: he will help you create. Now, the thing about that we saw last year, especially when Vince Williams was on the field in certain situations, was he will help you create one-on-one situations for your outside linebackers. Okay, because if he's crowding that line of scrimmage, the way he, whether he's sugaring or not. You have to respect him as a pass rusher, right? I mean, more so, I think, than, and look, I mean, Devin Bush was not bad rushing the passer, at Michigan. Now, the thing is though, when you have Bush, I mean, when you have a guy like Vince Williams crowding that line of scrimmage, and you could probably pick out probably 6 or 7 easy examples last year, they have to respect him, inside. And because of that, and by that I mean with an offensive lineman, and because of that, sometimes you'll set up some one-on-one situations for either Watt or Dupree, depending on what side of the formation Vince Williams is on. So, yeah, I mean, is it awful having him on the field? 200, 300 snaps, 350 snaps? No, obviously it's not, because once again, like I said, you want a guy that'll what we call right arm a pulling guard, just causing havoc in the backfield that way. You want a guy that ability to take on a tight end or a power a fullback, coming through the hole. That's your guy. But I just worry about when you get in a little bit deeper into some of those nickel snaps against some of your more accomplished quarterbacks. What might happen?
Yeah, and I'm going through his film right now, and it's hard to find any really truly negative plays of Vince Williams in coverage. Now, you could argue that they drop him to coverage less, which is true. I'll show that in my study tomorrow, that they don't have to put him in as many high stress situations as other linebackers. I think there's some truth to that, but honestly, I think that as a zone processor underneath, and even low walling defenders or low walling tight ends and receivers, even occasionally up the seam, he can do that very effectively. So I'll have kind of it's just hard to find any plays where you go, man, this guy just can't cover. I think there's actually less plays than what some people might think. But again, the question is, even if you don't want to fully expand that role to all nickel snaps, how do you replace him? Do you do that with UG3, a second-year guy, which I'm very high on, but I also recognize that this dude has not played a defensive snap yet and missed an entire offseason and preseason, and that's going to hurt him. So that's going to be a difficulty there, an issue there potentially. Or do you do with Terrell Edmonds, which is possible? Do you spin him down and just play kind of dime? But then how do you replace Terrell Edmonds? Safety depth, biggest concern on this team right now. So if you don't want to do the full expansion with Vince Williams and get him to 700-plus snaps, how do you replace him? I think it's an open question.
Yeah, look, I mean, I understand you being high on UG3, but we are now in a situation now where it's just going to be hard for the team to give him snaps moving forward during training camp and all, right. Because of all the he's another one of those second year guys and no fault of his own, obviously. I mean, at least he's healthy and he's able to participate in all this, but it's just hard to envision him getting. We got 42 days until the regular season opener, and they haven't even started. They're playing football in shorts and hats right now. So it's hard to imagine UG3, at least at the start of the season, having any kind of role whatsoever defensively.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm as high on UG3 as anybody. I'm even trying to say pull back, and he's probably not going to be your option, at least definitely to start the season. So do you do Edmonds? I mean, how do you curtail Williams snaps then, if not UG3?
Yeah, I think some semblance of a dime, All
right, but then who replaces Edmonds as a safety? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it can work. Look, I mean, you got a guy like Jordan Dangerfield, if he makes the roster, that's more quasi linebacker than probably anybody, right?
That's true. You could put Dangerfield there.
Now, am I suggesting that? I'm just giving you some option there. Look, we haven't seen Jordan Dangerfield play a high amount. I mean, outside of that game, against Kansas City a couple of years ago, right? We haven't seen him play a large selection of snaps. Now, but if there was a safety, a quasi, safety / linebacker that you would have probably a little bit more confidence playing in the box, it's him, right?
Yeah, that's a potential role for him. And maybe the way I would think about it is Edmonds would, in your dime package, Cam Sutton's your 6th DB, but you would just switch Edmonds and Cam Sutton. And while Cam Sutton is not your classic strong safety, if you're playing dime, you're probably not playing that on 2nd and 3, or goal line situations. So you're probably playing it in more obvious pass situations where Sutton's not going to be lined up in the box. You're playing more deep half or the middle and let Minka rotate down. So that might be the best way to go about it, is just to kind of flip Edmonds and Sutton's responsibility. And honestly, Sutton rotated to safety play sometimes last year, so it's not going to be foreign to him either.
Right.
So we'll see, but that is the news on Vince Williams.
If everything were to, and it's not, unfortunately, injuries interrupt these looks ahead, if you will. But I mean, if everything was to stay status quo right now, how many snaps would you project based on what we think we know now, which is really just based kind of off of what Keith Butler said the other day? What kind of snap count are you looking at for Vince Williams?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Again, 2 years ago he was around 730. I think he's going to come around. I'm gonna say around the 600 snap count, 600 to 650 kind of range this year.
Okay.
What do you think? You think that's lower than that?
I mean, it obviously can happen. Yes. I just my bias wants it to be under that.
Again, the question is it's just harder when you think about how much time are they going to play, and it's harder when you think about how you're going to replace those snaps. Anyway, speaking of inside linebackers, Keith Butler also talked about Devin Bush, of course, pick 2nd year for him. Well, he didn't outright say that he's going to be the signal caller. He did kind of make at least passing reference at that. Let me try to find the exact quote of it here. He says, quote, we are going to want him to help make calls and get the communication down. We think he's capable of doing that. We think he's really going to come alive for us a little bit this year. He played well for us last year as a rookie, but once you've been there, he's seen the game a little bit. We're hopeful that he's going to be able to have a good year for us this year. So again, not 100% sure about Bush being signal caller, but assuming he's a 3-down guy and given all the snaps he logged last year, all the things he learned last year, reasonable to expect that he's going to be the green dot man in 2020.
Man, you would think so. Now's the time, right?
Right. And Vince playing next to him is going to help too, because you got a veteran guy next to you.
Right. You would think, and he had a good rookie season, and now you really expect him to build on that. I mean, this is a guy that you traded up for, obviously a first round draft pick, a lot of it should come together. Now, obviously, he's another guy that you wish would have had, some semblance of an off-season program to help facilitate maybe that second year jump, right? So he's going to have to cram a lot here in the next couple of weeks, I think, here. But with his pedigree and what you have invested in him and the position that he plays, all of it, yeah. The huge jump forward. I mean, this guy really should grow leaps and bounds this year.
Yeah, there's every reason, because he did have a good rookie year. He learned from his mistakes. He got better as the year went on. Really impressed with his rookie year, kind of just getting thrown into the fire and having to play a lot of snaps right away. And every reason to believe he should be able to take another jump for him in year number 2. Butler also mentioned, if we talk about Cam Sutton, that Sutton's basically going to be the dime defender again this year. No surprise there. And big year for Cam Sutton. Big year for him and Mike Hilton, both nickel corners in the last year of their contract, and both trying to get paid after the season ends.
Yeah, those guys should both of them should log a fair amount of snaps as the season goes, obviously, and obviously Sutton, it'll depend a lot on, as you said, how many times they go dime kind of thing, but also you would think that Cam Sutton's the next guy up too at the corner spots, because we talked about earlier in the show with Justin Lane, guys really got to be behind the 8 ball now, and starting off, even though it's football and shorts and hats right now, being away from the team's not going to help his cause or his growth right now, especially on the heels of there not being, in any off-season program.
If Hayden or Nelson, knock on wood, were to get hurt, is it fair and reasonable to assume that Sutton is the next man up on the outside?
I would think so. I mean,
I would hope so.
Based on, we just have zero reason to have confidence right now in Justin Lane. Zero.
Mm-hmm. They've just been weird with Sutton, where they didn't always play him. They played him outside a little bit, but also there are times where they just also opt against. Like last year, Artie Burns was playing over Cam Sutton at times on the outside, like a Chargers game, and it just didn't feel like that made a whole lot of sense.
Boy, as you just, and I don't want to, anything can happen. This guy can obviously, it's not too late to turn things around, but you're looking at a guy like Justin Lane. Are we looking at yet another, early round corner just not working out,
Well, the weird thing with Lane is that it's a different kind of problem where he just can't get on the field. And part of that might be his own issue, but it's less that. It's just more of there's already talent in front of him. Artie was playing week 1 his rookie year. I think he played like 10 snaps against Washington in that game. And Senquez Golson was supposed to play right away, and all these guys were supposed to get opportunities right away. Lane's a little different, where he hasn't had to be thrusted in that role, which is a good thing for him because he was too raw coming out. No way he could have survived if he was asked to play snaps as a rookie. So I don't know, but obviously he's off to a not great start.
Yeah, you more than anything at this point right now, I want to see him get off this COVID list
right
quickly and get in there and get back to work, especially,
mm-hmm.
and he should by the time the pads go on and all like that. But it's, once again, it's just sad that we're not going to see a preseason game or anything like that to kind of use as a measuring stick. We're going to go into the season with not seeing Justin Lane play any snaps,
Right. Yeah, and that's detrimental to him, for a guy who's yet to play a snap on defense, second-year guy, to miss all this time certainly hurts him. And I was not crazy about Lane at the time they made the pick, and so my concerns are still very much there, and that has not changed, 18 months into his NFL career. Also, Keith Butler talked about Terrell Edmonds and thinks that Edmonds needs to have and will have a better year. He says, quote, Butler did, quote, "We took him high. At the time, we felt like he can help us. I think he's going to get better. I think having Minka across from him is going to help in terms of communication and the way they play and how they can complement each other. I think he's going to be a big asset for us as he continues to get better." And I do think that's important to point out with Terrell Edmonds. While there certainly is criticism of Edmonds and where his play needs to go, he has improved. There has been progression. I don't want to lose sight of that. It's not as much progression. It's not as quick of the progression as we would like or hope it to be, but he definitely improved from year 1 to year 2. Now we'll see what he does year 2 to year 3.
Boy, year 3, and with the amount of snaps that he's played, talking about Edmonds, you would really hope to see, especially, more of those splash plays, more of those, more of those forced fumbles, more of those, maybe what we call stuffs, near the line of scrimmage, maybe a pass breakup or two, and maybe some ball awareness that result in an interception or two. Look, I don't think the expectations on a strong safety type not named Troy Polamalu should be 5-6 interceptions, but you'd like to see him get his hands on a couple, 2 or 3 of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always harped on, not
that you can predict those things, but.
Right, but generally, you want to see those numbers increase. Again, defense had 38 takeaways last year. Edmonds not responsible for one of them. You have as many interceptions as your brother, who's a running back. You just want to see him be able to make more plays around the ball while being a steady run defender, consistent tackler are very critical things, no doubt about that. When you're a first-round pick, when you're the athlete he is, when you're the potential he has, you want to be more than just kind of your solid, classic, strong safety type guy in a world where takeaways and turnovers are king for a defense. So big year for Edmonds, no question about that.
And he was obviously Keith Butler was asked about I think Minkah Fitzpatrick kind of later in the interview too, wasn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. And just basically talking about, again, getting him in his second year with Pittsburgh, and the system and the scheme is going to help, hopefully moving him around more, just kind of echoing the things we've heard before. But yeah, you want to move Fitzpatrick around. And again, I really, despite the lost offseason, but the fact that you have the continuity, that you have essentially the same secondary as last year is really important. Last year you got Steven Nelson, new face, obviously trading for Minkah midseason, kind of limited you defensively in some of the pre-snap disguises and things you could look and show offenses. This year it's the same group, so that continuity is big, especially in a year where you don't have the offseason to work with these guys and kind of get everyone used to where they fit best. So hopefully they can be a little more versatile with the secondary this year.
Well, all right. Well, there we went. We just recapped a lot of what, or nearly all of what Keith Butler had to say, and along the way we kicked some dents in the paint cans along the way there. But even so, I think we both still stand where we've stood all off season here. Is man, this defense this year, this 2020 defense, if they stay healthy, this unit has a chance to be as potentially maybe special as we've seen since 2010, I think.
Absolutely. They have the potential to be no worse than a top 5 defense. That's the floor for them in terms of expectations, but certainly have the potential to be the best in football. And, I think they got a good shot at it.
I mean, I think we're looking at, potentially a defense that, at least probably 50 sacks and, 25 turnovers, you would think. And if they hit 50 sacks and at least 25 turnovers, and if one Ben Roethlisberger remains healthy, can make opposing teams pay for those turnovers, something the team wasn't able to do, the offense wasn't able to do last year. That should obviously, and look, I mean, just Roethlisberger alone should help be able to keep that defense off the field a little bit more too, you would think. Another plus. So maybe some of these sacks and interceptions or turnovers don't happen, aren't the volume that maybe they've been in the past, or at least last year, because of them not having to be on the field, as much there. But, I mean, everything we've said about this defense all off season long, and yes, losing Javon Hargrave, is a significant loss for this defense. Mark Barron, not so much. Now, just to have the continuity that this team has defensively, and even when you go down the depth chart a little ways, there's reasons to be excited.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good group. It's a similar group, and I'm excited for this unit for sure. There's more talent on this defense than there's been in quite some time. You got talent, you got experience, you got a lot of good things. Not counting on a rookie to step in and make plays right away. So all positives across the board. Dave, talk about quickly here just some COVID-related news. Try to stay away from that from the top of the show to begin, because there isn't anything major outside of the Washington and Sam was getting placed on the reserve COVID list. But we do have an announcement for when the opt-out date will be, and that deadline has been continually pushed back, and the NFL wanted to push that up. So it is now Thursday by 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the deadline for players to opt out. According to NFL Network, the only way for players to opt out after that deadline is if he has a new diagnosis that he's high risk, or if a player's family member dies, is hospitalized, or moves to a medical facility because of COVID-19. So we're already up to, by my count, as of last night, and it's probably higher by the time you listen to this, we were at 47 players league-wide who opted out by yesterday evening, and by the opt-out deadline on Thursday, I imagine the number will be well past 50.
And a couple big names too. I don't know if did we know about on Friday? Did we know about the Giants tackle?
Yeah, we did talk about Nate Solder.
All right. Well, since then we've had the Denver Broncos starting right tackle. I know that happened just in the last day or two here. So that's pretty significant. I mean, you got a guy like because Juwan James has now opted out for the Broncos for the 2020 season. Who's going to play right tackle for them in that Week 2 game against the Steelers? Or as The Rock would say, it doesn't matter. You know, at this point, because look, I mean, they went into training camp here talking about the Broncos with, I think, Elijah Wilkinson and Garrett Bowles were the two that were reportedly going to battle for the starting left tackle spot opposite James. Well, now that James, is no longer in the picture, you would think Bowles is probably going to be on the left. And look, Bowles is no smooth train ride either. With looking back the way he played last year, and then a guy like Wilkinson potentially being your right tackle, and Wilkinson even had to open up training camp for the Broncos on active PUP list for them because he's recovering from off-season foot surgery, and here we are now. He's I guess it'd be almost right around 50 days until he has to play against one Trent Watt.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned 50 sacks for this defense. He may be 60 based on the way these first two games are going to go with Dupree and Watt in this pass rush. So definitely some potentially tasty matchups to begin the year for those outside linebackers.
So we'll see. Look, I mean, there's still some significant names here being added, and as you said, we'll probably have a more finalized list by the time we get on Friday, when it comes to the list there. But, a lot more players are opting out than I thought would. That's for sure. It's some bigger names too,
Right, for sure. But as you see some of these bigger names get placed on the COVID list, and this is not the opt-out list, but the COVID list, guys like Matthew Stafford and Gardner Minshew certainly is eye-opening. You're seeing what's happening in baseball right now, the mess that it is currently, and that may be influencing some decisions for the NFL. Steelers, again, have yet to have a player opt out. As of this recording, I believe they're only one of 9 teams not to have any player on their roster opt out, but that, of course, could change. And again, I think you'll see that opt-out number increase as we near Thursday's deadline.
If the Steelers have anybody opt out at this point, moving forward, which is obviously a possibility, I would expect it to be a fringe guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's reported to camp right now. So if you were going to opt out, I'm not sure why you would report to camp in the first place. You can always still change your mind, I suppose. But my feeling is that there won't be one. Now, of course, like you said, there could be one, and respect that decision fully. But it feels like they won't have any opt-outs. Right.
That's the way it's looking at this point.
But we'll keep you posted if that changes. Again, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time is the deadline. All right, Dave, I think that was everything I had written down in my notes to talk about. Anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, you forgot to talk about Daniel Mccullers when we were talking about the defense there and the recent film room that you did on him.
Yeah, well, I think I talked about this a while back, and I was teasing that I was going to do this video for a while now. I finally kind of got around to it, but it just, a video breakdown of why I don't think Mccullers can be a starting nose tackle. That's probably not a shock to most people, and I'm sure that's a fairly uncontroversial statement at this point. But just given the Steelers' more aggressive, one-gapping, run-stunting, penetrating kind of front, that it does not work with McCullers' skill set. And that's not me being mean to McCullers. It's not really his fault. He's 340 pounds. Of course, he's not going to really fit well in that system, but just kind of a video breakdown of some of the issues he's going to bring against zone schemes, when you want to try to one-gap penetrate, when you try to run stunt, and just some of those issues he's going to present. And so I just wanted to kind of really break that down, compare that to Javon Hargrave, and say, why Tyson Alualu, who's going to have some of those same issues, but not to the degree McCullers, has to kind of be your starting nose tackle in 2020.
All right,
Dave, anything else you want to talk about, or we can get to some reader emails?
I think we could probably start getting to some reader emails here, if I can find my if I get this thing open here.
And I'll keep an eye on Twitter if Ben starts speaking with the media.
Let's see here. Okay, we have from Jordan writes in, "What's up, guys? After watching tape of all our rookies, I was the most surprised about Anthony McFarland. I really thought the Maryland website wasn't truthful about his weight, but I was wrong. I was shocked at how many tackles he broke, his willingness to run between the tackles, and that he had no fear in pass protection. He also might even be more electric than his 40 time. Do you think I'm jumping the gun by thinking he could be our number one back by 2021 with James Conner most likely leaving?" Jordan, we have a lot of film rooms up. I'm going to take this opportunity to pat ourselves as a group on the back. We got a lot of stuff on McFarland on the site. So talking about how he was used in the passing game, his pass protection, his ability to run between the tackles, his home run threat. A lot of what you just said there, and he's not a Dree Archer, Chris Rainey back, if you will. He's really is put together, nicely when it comes to that. So, now jumping the gun and wondering if he could be the number one, kind of the true feature back in 2021. I think that's a little bit rich, Alex.
Yeah, I think it is too, as we sit here today, but I know we've had this conversation before of just the interesting potential dilemma that this team's going to face after the season, assuming there's just James Conner's final season. Do you sit there and say you're comfortable with what you have in Snell and McFarland and whoever else is in that backfield mix, and those are going to be your guys? Or do you feel like we're not confident enough in any of those guys to be the guys, so let's go draft a running back in the second or third round in the 2021 draft? I don't know which direction they're going to go, but that's going to be the choice they're likely to face after this season.
It's going to be next year, I would think, somebody and McFarland.
In terms of somebody
and McFarland. We just don't, is that somebody going to be another, you would think as we sit here right now, it'd potentially be a guy like Benny Snell and McFarland being your 1-2 punch,
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously that depends on what all transpires this season, especially when it comes to Snell. I just don't think that McFarland, look, I mean, you do have had, some smaller, not prototypical, I guess, you could point to what kind of like a Alvin Kamara, who else would be another, the Panthers running back, obviously, Christian, McCaffrey, another guy that probably not prototypical, feature guy just from a height, weight, standards. But, I'm not saying that McFarland, it's a slam dunk that he can't be the guy. The way he was used at Maryland and the way he looks on tape, I just view him more as a complimentary type of back.
Yeah, I mean, especially for Pittsburgh. In other systems it may work, but man, Pittsburgh, when they've had feature backs, they've always been big. Even Mendenhall, even though he was not a great feature back, but he was still the guy. I mean, outside of Willie Parker, which again, not Tomlin era, they've gone bigger guys. So it's hard to see McFarland ever being the feature back in Pittsburgh, but could it be McFarland and Snell, as you said? That's a distinct possibility. Or could it be McFarland and a high draft pick? That's a possibility.
That's why I said somebody McFarland,
Yeah, that's the new CBS sitcom, McFarland and somebody coming this fall.
And we'll learn more as this season progresses, maybe when it comes to a guy like Benny Snell, I don't think it'll be a Jalen Samuels and McFarland, type situation. And look, I think Smallwood's only a 1-year deal, so he's probably, even if he makes the roster, he's probably going to be a one and done situation. I mean, could you indeed get in a situation where yet again this team is spending a top 4 round selection on a running back? I think it's possible.
they're getting good at it. They've done it for how many years in a row now, so that could happen again. So again, just how much will you learn about McFarland and Snell? And obviously, if Connor stays healthy, you'll learn less. If Connor struggles to stay on the field again, then you'll learn more, and that may help your decision. But yeah, it could be very interesting. So just let's see how this year plays out and take it from there.
Jordan, pop around on SteelersDepot.com, especially right after the draft, maybe the first, 4, 5, 6 weeks after the draft, because we had a lot of film rooms up on him on various different aspects, intermediate runs, long runs. You did something, I think, Alex, on what'd you do?
It was, zone reads, bang bounce, Ben reads, and zone scheme.
Right. So a bunch of different things on Anthony McFarland on the site there. So yeah, look, I mean, I once I got into his tape, man, I switched gears. Look, I just didn't know, outside of what Daniel had written up on him on a pre-draft, kind of profile on him. That's really all. I didn't pay him much mind prior to the draft, but after the draft, obviously, when you knew he was a selection, you dived deeper into his tape. Really a nice, in my opinion, a nice find where they got him. And definitely, once again, not a Dree Archer, Chris Rainey kind of player. Boy, that guy get on the outside, he can home run you. There's no doubt about that, and he can do that in the passing game as well. Benjamin McDay writes in, "Hey, Dave and Alex, if we assume that Juju will be the number one wide receiver in the offense, why is it almost conclusive by everyone that Deontay Johnson will be the number two? I like James Washington more as a reliable pass catcher, blocker, and with ball security." And he has in parentheses lobster crackers. I understand that Washington may not be as dynamic of an athlete as Johnson, but I think he has qualities that would make him a good number two wide receiver for this team. Second question is about Bud Dupree. Everyone looks to compare his stats to a defensive end during his grievance. Why not compare his stats to other off-the-ball outside linebackers? I think then you will see that he is not an other off-the-ball outside linebackers. I think then you will see that he is not an OLB, but an edge defender. Who cares if his hand is in the dirt or not? The question is, where does he line up besides Hayward or Bush? Look, you're preaching to the choir here, and Eric Clarion University 2005 grad, Alex.
Hey, go Golden Eagles, fellow Clarion.
As far as James Washington goes, I don't like to get into this whole number one, number two thing with this group of wide receivers now, since obviously AB's gone. I don't think that's kind of proper to go that route there. But with that said, if I'm going to have two wide receivers on the field right now, I think they're going to be Juju and Deontay.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, Dave, and that's how it's going to be. While the Steelers obviously are a base 11 personnel, 3 receiver offense, when they go to receivers, it's Deontay as the X, Juju as the Z. I mean, Deontay basically had the same level of production, or arguably outproduced James Washington last year when Johnson wasn't even starting the year. It's the way that Washington was. So I like James Washington. I like his improvement and progression, but Deontay's the literal starter of Washington is at literal number 3. He's going to play in 11 personnel, but when they go with a couple tight ends or a fullback, it's going to be Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster. That's why they're 1 and 2.
I am a James Washington fan still, but and I think it's important to go over kind of the things that we covered earlier in the podcast about what Ike Hilliard said about James Washington in the areas that he needs to develop in, because I thought those were really, really spot on.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. Just to be a more consistent player, to be able to work off press better, and certainly to be more than just a vertical threat, to be able to win the whole route tree is going to be important for him.
Absolutely. But even so, I view Washington as more of 3 wide receivers on the field. In comes James Washington to play some Z snaps there.
Right, and to primarily be a vertical, clear out kind of guy, where Deontay's your offense, he's the X receiver. Your offense runs through the X receiver much more than it is the Z vertical type of receiver.
And as far as Bud goes in that grievance and all like that, look, Benjamin, if it was up to me and I were the Steelers, I wouldn't even let it go to the grievance. I'd go ahead and meet him somewhere in the middle along the lines the way the Ravens did with Matthew Judon. I think that's the prudent thing to do. Now, obviously, if you want to split hairs, you want to get into, and I don't know, Benjamin, if maybe you heard a couple of shows ago when we got into the comparing him, talking about Dupree and the drop percentages compared to true 4-3 defensive ends around the NFL that had qualifying snap numbers. There is enough difference there that the Steelers would have a good case that not to pay him that way. So, but if it was up to me, I would meet Bud Dupree in the middle.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's been no update on any sort of timetable grievance-wise, right? No information.
None that I see. And boy, the NFLPA has been slow at processing some of these contracts and all right now, that are coming in. They are way, way, way behind on some of this stuff, on getting some info here. And I imagine it has to do with all this stuff going on with the COVID and all these draft picks signing at once, and all these contracts are having to come in all at one time here. So it might be a while before we learn a little bit more on any of that there. We do have Ben Roethlisberger speaking now. You want to cover some of these highlights coming across the Twitter machine right now for the folks?
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up right now. I mean, everyone's tweeting out the same thing right now, but this is just quotes from media reporters part of the call. Says Ben's had no setbacks in his throwing program. Quote, it feels really, really good. Says he threw a lot of footballs on Monday. Said he woke up this morning, his arm felt great, which is so important. Not only just about throwing the football, but how you feel the next day and the day after that. And do you have pain or soreness, unusual amount of soreness or pain, after throwing and exerting yourself? So that's really good. And he says about the injury, the Seahawks game last year. This is a quote from Joe Ruder. Ben Roethlisberger said he always had a little pain in his elbow, but wasn't serious. But on throw to Juju against Seattle, it was a, quote, different discomfort than I ever felt. It was shooting down my arm. I knew something was different at that moment. So that's the latest from Ben, and we'll cover that on the site throughout the day.
Right, and you'll be getting probably on that right after we get off this podcast here, right? So look, we'll, as these quotes come out through the day, we'll update it on. I'm sure there'll be plenty of posts on SteelersDepot.com as this Tuesday progresses about what all Ben Roethlisberger had to say. And also Matt Canada speaking later today too. So it'll be interesting to see some of the line of questioning that he gets really speaking to the media for the first time. One other question here that we'll cover, then we'll get out of here because we got a lot to cover here with Ben Roethlisberger. This one from Ted Webb. Usually by now the Steelers would have announced 2020 Hall of Honor members, but I'm assuming this will not happen since the whole COVID thing and keeping public displays to a minimum. I thought maybe they still might announce the members and maybe induct them next year, but looks like they're just skipping it altogether. Have you guys heard anything about it? Besides Troy, who's out automatically in since he made the NFL Hall of Fame, who would be other good choices? He says Heath Miller, Mike Wagner, and Myron Cope. Obviously some good selections there, Ted, and I got to be honest with you. I have not paid attention to that aspect of it.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't even thought about it in a while either. All those were great suggestions. I wouldn't argue with any one of those, with Heath, with Wagner, of course, with Myron Cope. So, yeah, I'm not sure they're doing it. I'm assuming they're not, but I honestly just have not even thought about it too much in the scope of this year.
I have not, so we'll have to see. I didn't even know. I suppose it is about the timeline where they normally announce that stuff, right? I haven't.
Right, they used to do it at a training camp, but yeah, don't know what's happening this year.
All right, what else do we have to close this thing out? Any other stuff?
Ben says he feels he says he is lighter than he's been in 13 or 14 years. That's
what?
Not even a specific pound, but yeah.
I thought he was fat.
The fat Ben stuff, I think, has fully been debunked.
You know, he looking at those pictures and video that came out on Monday, to me, this looks like Ben showing up for camp every year. You know, why do we go through this every year? It seems like.
Even if he was fat Ben, who cares? The dude was playing great. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. It's clearly working for him. So I don't know why anyone cared about it in the first place.
You know, it seemed like every offseason or every other offseason, Ben's fat. You know, Ben needs to take his offseason more serious. And then you get to camp and it's like, Ben looks good. So enough with that. I guess it sells newspapers. Do they still make newspapers anymore?
Not for much longer.
All right, Alex and I will be back on Friday to kind of wrap up. Well, we have a lot happening between now and then. Obviously, Ben today, Matt Canada today, Mike Tomlin going to speak later on this week. I think another player or two going to speak later this week, and obviously training camp progressing on right now as well too. I don't know, maybe we're getting close to getting back to three shows a week here, but until further notice, we'll have the show Friday and move forward that way there. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the donate button up right navigational bar and donate what you can. We certainly would appreciate it there. And there was no real name for it, Roethlisberger said. It's not Tommy John tear or flexor. What does that say?
There are flexor tendons attached to your elbow. I tore 3 of them of the 5. That's what Dr. Mel said. All right, she called that. I think
so. Congratulations. Yeah, good on Dr. Mel there. But anyway, if you want an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. For $25 for 1 calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of the site. Boy, we're pumping in late breaking stuff right in this thing up until the end. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.